Growing up, I was always the odd one out in my family. While my older brother Marcus inherited Dad's confidence and Mom's sharp tongue, I got their disappointed sighs and constant reminders that I wasn't quite measuring up. The family cabin in Lake Tahoe became the perfect symbol of this dynamic. A place where I was tolerated rather than welcomed, invited out of obligation rather than love. The cabin had been in our family for 3 generations, passed down from my grandfather to my father. It was a beautiful 2-story log structure with a wraparound porch, nestled among towering pines with a private dock stretching into the crystal-clear lake. Every summer, the extended family would gather there for what Mom called our sacred family tradition. But for me, it felt more like an annual reminder of exactly where I stood in the family hierarchy. Marcus, being the golden child, treated the cabin like his personal kingdom. He'd invite his college buddies, throw loud parties, and generally act like he owned the place. Meanwhile, I was expected to clean up after everyone, maintain the dock, and basically serve as unpaid staff. When I complained, Dad would give me his standard lecture about earning my place in the family and proving I deserved to be there. The breaking point came last September during what was supposed to be a family bonding weekend. I had just started my new job as a property acquisition specialist for a real estate investment firm, but my family saw it as just another entry-level position that proved I wasn't destined for greatness. Marcus, who worked in Dad's insurance agency, never missed a chance to remind everyone that he was building something substantial, while I was just shuffling papers for rich people. That Friday evening, I arrived at the cabin after a particularly grueling week of closing deals. I was looking forward to some quiet time by the lake, maybe catch up on some reading. Instead, I found the place packed with Marcus's fraternity brothers from college, all of them now in their 30s but still acting like they were 20. Empty beer bottles covered every surface, the sound system was blasting, and someone had apparently tried to grill inside the cabin, leaving scorch marks on Mom's antique dining table. "Oh look, the worker bee showed up," Marcus announced when he saw me. His friends laughed as he grabbed another beer from what I realized was my designated sleeping area, the couch. "Hope you brought your cleaning supplies because we're having a real party this weekend." I surveyed the damage quietly. "Where am I supposed to sleep?" "Figure it out," he shrugged. "Maybe there's room in the shed with the lawn equipment. Seems more your speed anyway." His friends erupted in laughter. I recognized most of them from previous gatherings, trust fund kids who'd never worked a real day in their lives but somehow felt entitled to look down on anyone who actually earned their money. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I'd learned long ago that pointing out ironies to my family only led to more humiliation. I spent that night in my car, parked at the far end of the driveway. The next morning, I woke to find one of Marcus's friends urinating on my hood while the others cheered him on from the porch. When I approached the cabin to use the bathroom, Marcus blocked the door. "Sorry, family only," he said with a smirk. "You can use the gas station down the mountain." "Marcus, I just need to." I said family only. His voice got louder, ensuring his audience could hear. "Maybe if you contributed something to this family instead of just taking up space, we'd treat you differently." The humiliation burned, but I kept my expression neutral. "Understood." I drove down to the gas station, used their facilities, bought some coffee, and sat in my car for a while thinking. 3 years of working 60-hour weeks, building my expertise in property acquisition, learning the ins and outs of real estate law and investment strategies. All so I could afford to buy my own place and never have to depend on family charity again. The irony was that I'd gotten so good at my job that I'd started making some investments of my own. When I returned to the cabin around noon, Marcus and his crew were setting up what looked like a full weekend party. They'd moved furniture around, set up beer pong tables, and someone was attempting to install speakers on the deck. The neighbors probably hated it, but the nearest house was a quarter-mile away, so they were getting away with it. "There she is," Marcus called out when he saw me. "Ready to help us set up? We need someone to run to town for more supplies." I looked around at the mess they'd already created. "Actually, I think I'm going to head home." "Probably for the best," Mom's voice came from behind me. I turned to see her emerging from the kitchen, carrying a platter of sandwiches. She must have arrived while I was gone. "This is really more of a celebration for people who've accomplished something." The comment hit like a physical blow. Here I was, having just closed the biggest deal of my career, and she was treating me like a charity case. But I'd learned not to argue with Mom when she was in this mood. I just nodded. "I'll grab my things." "What things?" Marcus laughed. "You slept in your car." More laughter from his audience. I walked to where I'd left my overnight bag the day before and picked it up. As I headed toward my car, I could hear Marcus making some joke about family disappointments that earned another round of chuckles. I was almost to my car when I heard Mom call out, "Make sure you don't come back until you've got your life figured out. We're tired of carrying dead weight." I turned around to see her standing on the porch with Marcus, both of them looking at me with expressions of disgust and disappointment. Marcus had his phone out, clearly recording. The rest of his friends had gathered to watch the show. "I understand," I said simply, then got in my car and drove away. The 3-hour drive home gave me plenty of time to think. I wasn't angry. Anger was a luxury I'd given up years ago when it came to my family. Instead, I felt something closer to resignation mixed with a strange sense of clarity. They'd finally said out loud what I'd always known they felt. I wasn't really part of their family. When I got home to my small apartment in the city, I opened my laptop and did what I always did when I was stressed. I dove into work. I had several property deals in progress, including one that had been particularly challenging. It was a portfolio acquisition involving multiple properties around Lake Tahoe, including some that had been in families for generations. The sellers needed quick cash for various reasons, and they were willing to accept below-market prices for fast, no-contingency closings. One property in particular had caught my attention, a beautiful cabin that the sellers described as a classic family retreat with stunning lake views and private dock access. The photos looked familiar, but I'd seen hundreds of similar properties in the past few months. The price was surprisingly low for the location and amenities, which suggested the sellers were highly motivated. That Sunday evening, I was reviewing the final paperwork when my phone buzzed with a notification. Marcus had posted on social media. The post showed photos of me walking to my car with my overnight bag looking defeated. Caption read, "Finally kicked out the freeloader. Family cabin is for family only. Some people need to learn that respect is earned, not given. Maybe now she'll figure out how to support herself instead of expecting handouts. Hashtag family first, hashtag no freeloaders, hashtag earn your place." Within an hour, the post had 847 likes and dozens of comments from relatives and family friends, all expressing support for Marcus's tough love approach. Aunt Jennifer wrote, "About time." Uncle Rob added she needed to hear this. Even some of Mom's church friends chimed in with comments about enabling and teaching responsibility. I scrolled through the comments, reading each one with growing detachment. These people had watched me work multiple jobs through college, seen me graduate with honors, and knew I'd been supporting myself completely for years. But the narrative was more important than the facts. Marcus was the successful one who deserved the family's resources. I was the freeloader who needed to be taught a lesson. I commented simply, "Have fun." Then I went back to my property paperwork. Monday morning, I was in the office early, finalizing the Lake Tahoe portfolio acquisition. My boss, Jennifer Walsh, was impressed with how quickly I'd moved on the deal. 18 properties in one transaction? She said, reviewing the files. Including that beautiful cabin with the private dock? The sellers must have really trusted you to move this fast. I nodded. They needed certainty more than they needed maximum price. Sometimes timing is more valuable than money. Well, congratulations. This puts you well ahead of your quarterly targets. And speaking of that cabin, the address looks familiar. Isn't that near where your family has their place? Very near, I said. Actually, it might be exactly where my family has their place. Jennifer looked confused for a moment, then understanding dawned. Wait, you mean? I need to make a phone call to the property management company we use for the Lake Tahoe properties. They'll need to conduct an inspection and notify any current occupants about the ownership change. The property management company, Alpine Lake Services, was efficient and professional. When I called to discuss the newly acquired cabin, the manager, David Chin, was familiar with the property. Beautiful place, he said. The previous owners mentioned there might be family members who assumed they had permanent access. We'll need to clarify the situation and establish proper rental procedures going forward. What's the standard protocol for that? We do an immediate inspection to assess any damage and establish baseline conditions. Then we notify anyone currently on the property about the ownership change and rental requirements. If they want to continue using the property, they'll need to go through our booking system like any other clients. I checked my calendar. How soon can you do the inspection? We could have someone there this afternoon if needed. Is there some urgency? I thought about Marcus's social media post, which was still collecting likes and supportive comments. There might be. The current occupants seem to believe they have permanent rights to the property. Understood. We'll handle it diplomatically but firmly. Property rights are property rights. That afternoon while I was in a client meeting, my phone started buzzing repeatedly. Text after text, call after call. I ignored them until the meeting ended, then checked the flood of messages. Marcus, what the hell did you do? Mom, call me immediately. There's been some kind of mistake. Dad, whatever game you're playing, stop it now. Aunt Jennifer, why are there strangers at the cabin claiming they own it? The messages kept coming, each more frantic than the last. But the one that made me smile was a missed call from an unknown number with a Lake Tahoe area code. The voicemail was from David Chin. Ms. Rodriguez, this is David from Alpine Lake Services. We completed the property inspection at your Lake Tahoe cabin this afternoon. The current occupants were quite surprised to learn about the ownership change. They've been asked to vacate by tomorrow morning unless they'd like to discuss rental arrangements. There was some damage to the interior. Scorch marks on an antique dining table, stains on the furniture, and general cleanliness issues. We'll send you a full report with photos and repair estimates. The previous occupants claimed they were family and had rights to the property, but I explained that property ownership doesn't work that way. They seemed quite upset, but they're gathering their belongings now. Please call if you have any questions. I sat in my car in the parking garage listening to the message twice. Then I called David back. Ms. Rodriguez, thank you for calling back. I have to say that was one of the more dramatic property transitions I've handled. The young man seemed to think this was all some kind of mistake. No mistake, I said. What's the damage assessment? About $3,000 in repairs and deep cleaning. Nothing structural, but they clearly weren't treating the property with much respect. We've documented everything for insurance purposes. And they understood they need to vacate? Oh yes. Very clearly. Though I have to ask, when the young man said he was going to call his lawyer about family property rights, should I be concerned about any legal challenges? I almost laughed. Marcus didn't have a lawyer, and Dad's insurance agency definitely didn't handle property law. No legal challenges. The sale was completely legitimate and I have all the documentation. They were never legal owners, just family members who assumed they had permanent access. Understood. We'll proceed with the standard protocols then. Would you like us to arrange for cleaning and repairs? Please do. And David? If any of them contact you claiming family rights or demanding access, refer them to our legal department. Of course. Congratulations on your new property, by the way. It's going to be beautiful once we get it properly maintained. After hanging up, I sat in my car for a few more minutes, processing what had just happened. 3 years of saving, investing, and building expertise in real estate had led to this moment. The family cabin that had represented everything I couldn't have, everything I wasn't good enough for, was now mine. My phone rang. Marcus, what did you do? His voice was shaking with rage. These people came to the cabin claiming they work for you. They said you bought it. That's impossible. Is it? Yes. It's been in our family for generations. Dad owns it. Dad sold it, along with 17 other properties. The previous owners needed quick cash for personal reasons. There was silence on the other end. Then, you're lying. The property management company should have given you their business card. You can call them if you have questions about the rental process. Rental process? What rental process? This is our family cabin. It was your family cabin. Now it's my cabin. If you'd like to use it, you'll need to book it through Alpine Lake Services like any other client. They offer competitive rates for the area. More silence. Then, in a voice I'd never heard from Marcus before, small and confused, How? How what? How do you own it? You work for, you don't have that kind of money. I could have explained about property acquisition, about investment strategies, about how being underestimated in negotiations was actually an advantage. I could have told him about the portfolio deal, about leveraging market knowledge and relationships to create opportunities. Instead, I said simply, I earned it. The line went quiet for almost a minute. Then Marcus said, this isn't over. Actually, it is. David has photos of the damage to the property. The repair bill is about $3,000. Your security deposit if you choose to rent in the future will need to account for your track record. I hung up. Over the next few hours, the calls and texts continued. Mom demanded to know, How I could do this to family. Dad threatened to get lawyers involved, until I reminded him that he'd signed all the paperwork himself. He just hadn't bothered to ask who the buyer was. Various relatives weighed in with their outrage, but their leverage was gone. I owned the property now. Their opinions were just noise. The most telling message came from Aunt Jennifer, who'd been one of the most enthusiastic supporters of Marcus's social media post. Maybe we should talk about this like adults. I'm sure we can work something out that makes everyone happy. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I called David Chin back. I'd like to discuss the rental policies for the property. What are your most restrictive terms? Well, we can require significant security deposits, mandate professional cleaning both before and after stays, and implement strict policies about parties, noise, and property damage. We can also maintain a blacklist of guests who've proven problematic. Implement all of that. And David? Add Marcus Rodriguez, Tom Rodriguez, and Linda Rodriguez to the blacklist. Permanent ban. Understood. Should I note the reason? Property damage and failure to respect ownership rights. Consider it done. That evening, I poured myself a glass of wine and opened my laptop. Marcus's social media post was still there, but the tone of the comments had shifted dramatically. Someone had figured out what happened and word was spreading. The new comments were a mix of shock, confusion, and grudging respect. Wait, she bought the cabin? How did she afford that? Maybe we don't know the whole story here. But Marcus hadn't taken the post down. If anything, he doubled down, adding comments about betraying family and using tricks to steal family property. Each comment made him look smaller and more desperate. I started typing a comment of my own, then stopped. There was nothing to say. The results spoke for themselves. Instead, I opened a new browser tab and started researching vacation rental properties in the area. If I was going to own a Lake Tahoe cabin, I might as well make it profitable. According to the rental comps, I could easily cover the property expenses and generate significant income. Properties like mine were booking months in advance during peak season. My phone rang one more time that night. We need to talk, she said without preamble. About what? About what you've done. About how we can fix this. Fix what? I bought a property that was for sale. The transaction was legal and legitimate. But it's our family cabin. Her voice cracked slightly. It's where we've had Christmas morning for 15 years. Where your grandfather taught Marcus to fish. Where I was told I was a freeloader who didn't deserve to be there? Silence. Where I slept in my car because I wasn't welcome inside? More silence. Where you told me not to come back until I got my life figured out. I didn't mean. You meant exactly what you said. And I listened. I got my life figured out. I figured out how to buy the place where I wasn't welcome and turn it into an asset that generates income. I figured out how to stop depending on people who didn't respect me. But we're family, she whispered. Family doesn't treat each other the way you treated me. Family doesn't publicly humiliate each other for social media likes. Family doesn't make someone sleep in their car because they're not worthy of a couch. We can change. We can do better. I looked out my apartment window at the city lights below. Somewhere out there were dozens of properties I'd helped clients acquire, investments I'd made, deals I'd structured. A whole career built on understanding value and knowing when to walk away from bad deals. Maybe you can, I said finally. But that's not my problem anymore. I hung up and turned off my phone. The next morning, I woke to an email from David Chin with photos of the cleaned and repaired cabin. It looked beautiful, better than I'd ever seen it during family gatherings. Professional photographers were coming that afternoon to take listing photos for the rental platform. I also had 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. I deleted them without reading them. At work, Jennifer Walsh stopped by my office. I heard about your Lake Tahoe property situation. Word travels fast in real estate circles. I hope there aren't any professional concerns. She smiled. Are you kidding? You identified an undervalued asset, moved quickly to acquire it, and managed the transition professionally. It's exactly the kind of strategic thinking we want from our senior associates. Senior associates? We've been discussing your promotion. The Lake Tahoe portfolio acquisition put you over the top. Congratulations, Senior Property Acquisition Specialist Rodriguez. Your new salary starts Monday. As she walked away, I realized I was smiling for the first time in days. Then my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is David from Alpine Lake Services. Thought you should know. We've had several calls from people claiming to be your family demanding access to the property. I explained that they're on the restricted list. One young man became quite agitated and started shouting about family property rights and teaching lessons. I've documented everything and notified local law enforcement as a precaution. Your property is secure. I typed back, "Thank you. Please maintain all current restrictions."